This video will have spoilers, both for Hollow Knight Silksong and for the Old and New Testaments. The wait was agonizing. At first, it was supposed to come imminently. The original timeline was a little unclear, sure, but the community kept finding hints and clues that indicated that it must be just around the corner. And yet, at each expected event, no news. Just a handful of vibrant images to pore over again and again, looking for something, anything novel. The strange thing is, these seeming disappointments didn't reduce the excitement. In fact, every time it didn't show up, the anticipation for it redoubled. Its very existence seemed to recontextualize the original, the wait now a vital part of the community's story. Surely, we haven't been forgotten about. Surely this time, it's for real. I'm speaking, of course, about the biblical apocalypse foretold in the Book of Revelation by John of Patmos. Since its original writing nearly 2,000 years ago, the Book of Revelation has held a bizarre and thorny place in biblical canon. Its promises of falling stars and lakes of fire, of dragons, virgins, and horsemen of the apocalypse are frightening and violent, even within the context of the Old and New Testaments. Revelation has long been the territory of fringe movements, homegrown offshoots of traditional Christianity that claim to have found a new secret code within its dizzying text, sometimes flaming out spectacularly, and sometimes working their way back into the mainstream. For some, its bombastic conclusion to the New Testament reshapes the entire purpose of their belief. Also, there's a game called Hollow Knight Silksong. Though not as protracted as the wait for the apocalypse, the anticipation for Silksong's release burned with a fervor rarely seen in the gaming landscape. And then, Silksong did the one thing the prophecies in the Book of Revelation have thus far failed to do. It actually happened. When Silksong released in September of 2025, reactions were swift and many. It's beautiful, it's hard, it's huge, it's also about religion? This was, for me, the most unexpected part of my first hours with the game. The quality of its art didn't come as much of a surprise, nor initially did its size or difficulty. But in all my excitement for Silksong, I truly did not predict that it would shape its entire narrative around a religious pilgrimage. I did not expect the currency of the game would literally be rosary beads. I did not expect that you would find automated confession booths, or that so much dialogue would circle around the topic of faith. The original Hollow Knight was a game about memory and ruin, about gods and time and ultimately purpose, but this specific theme, a constant focus on an organized religion reinforced in the very structure of the world, was something new. And after my original surprise at the presence of the theme came the next question. So, what's it doing here? What is the game saying with such an omnipresent motif? The first believer most players will encounter in Hollow Knight Silksong is Sherma, a wonderfully noisy little bug determined to make pilgrimage to the fabled citadel of Pharloom. Sherma is standing in front of a closed gate, banging his bells together and singing. He is absolutely, totally stymied on forward progress until you open the gate for him. And then, this guy has the absolute nerve to say, "The gate heard my song, that's why it opened." Brother, your song didn't hit the switch on the other side of the wall. That was me. Throughout the game, we will encounter this type of naivete. Pilgrims that seem almost completely in denial of reality on their quest through the incredibly hostile and perilous lands of Pharloom. That Sherma isn't killed on his random wanderings through swamps, towers, and lava fields seems due to random luck more than anything else. Further demonstrations of faith can be found in the rosary beads held by the creatures of Pharloom. Many enemies drop rosaries upon death, but not all of them. The vermin of Silksong's world, the unthinking bugs and beasts, almost never drop beads. We only get them from semi-sentient creatures, ones cognizant enough to wear clothes and wield weapons, ones that seem capable of feeling shame. can they fear God? If so, they'll probably be carrying some beads with them. But the beads serve another purpose too. They are, of course, currency. Everything is bought and sold in Pharloom with rosary beads, often at exorbitant prices. 500 beads for one small key? 80 beads for a place to sit? The rosaries demonstrate another aspect of religion in Silksong. For every true believer, there is someone willing to take advantage of their belief. One shopkeeper who charges for the privilege of merely entering his shop warns that your collected rosaries may weigh you down on your ascent, so you should give them to him instead. This extractive economy is pushed to its breaking point once you enter the Holy Citadel itself, in which you're required to pay every single time you'd like to sit on a bench, where you can feed rosaries into an automated confessional that will only ever tell you to work harder, where ludicrously expensive vending machines will deliver a criminally small parcel of resources. And inevitably, despite our best wishes, the system works on us too. The rosaries become a measure of self-worth. Hornet's life feels far more valuable with 200 or 400 beads in her pocket. She leaves them in a tidy little bundle wherever she dies, but die again on the way back, and the whole collection goes down the drain. I perish in a pit of spikes on my way back to retrieve my beads, and I scream, my concern not with Hornet herself, but with all the currency I just lost. Life is cheap. Religion is not. And if this was the sole method of religious exploitation in Pharloom, every bug convinced to hoard rosaries as an indication of their belief, while simultaneously compelled to spend them for basic necessities, the target of Silksong's indictment would already be pretty clear. But all of that is before we get into literal thought control. When we first arrive at Belhart, a stop along the road to the Holy Citadel, we're met with an alarming sight. All of the bugs of the community strung up in a web of shimmering silk, suspended, helpless, frozen in the midst of some unwilling rapture. It binds not only their bodies, but their minds. After you eventually free them, one resident tells you that it was a horror. Although they were connected to something greater, their own thoughts were smothered amidst the tangle. You'll move on from Belhart, but the possibility, the image of the bugs caught in a web, cannot be forgotten. Which other threads could bind what other beings? In the first Hollow Night, the bugs of Hallownest were gradually stricken with the infection, a sort of queasy fungal growth that drove them into a frenzied, uncontrollable rage. But as pointed out in an excellent post by Rafflesia Arnaldi, what's happening to the residents of Pharloom is almost the exact opposite. Yes, they too are losing their minds, but rather than a plague driving them to madness, the sentient beings surrounding the Citadel are being struck with something called the haunting, the influence of their god, their religion, closing like a vice around every conscious creature. As that vice tightens, their individuality is squeezed out. The haunting leaves them just as husk-like as their infected brethren, but with a crucial difference. Instead of a frenzy, the haunting turns them into unwilling puppets, mindlessly going through the motions of servitude. The nature of this haunting is more slippery than the infection, however, because of the multifaceted way it exerts control. Some bugs afflicted with the deepest levels of haunting are being literally controlled, like marionettes directed by some higher power via the silk in their shells. But others are controlled more insidiously, their behavior not directly puppeteered, but still manipulated by the stubbornness of their faith. Deep in the machinery under the Citadel, we can find a creature named Loam. Loam is not afflicted by the haunting in the way other bugs are. He can think and speak, and he doesn't try to attack us. But Loam is not, by any measure, well. When we find him, he's providing power to the Citadel by running on a treadmill. There is no telling how long he's been there, but his clothes are ragged, his breath is short, he stumbles like a horse about to drop dead from exhaustion. And yet Loam has no intention of stopping. Me cannot rest he says. Us works, and Citadel breathes, and them's above do sing, and all is right. And when us works enough, them sees it. Them sees it, and us gets us holy reward. He is sure, absolutely convinced, that one day his back-breaking work will be noticed by someone up above. He's too distant to even guess who that would be, but he won't accept Hornet's suggestion that he may have been forgotten by his masters, nor will he allow her to play music that reminds him of his life before. Loam is not haunted in the most explicit sense, but he will run himself to death before he reconsiders his duties to the Citadel. What is Silksong's perspective on the religion that permeates the game? Very clearly, it's highlighting belief's potential as a coercive force. It can convince pilgrims to make an exceptionally dangerous and ill-advised journey to a salvationless cathedral. It compels them to hoard money only so they can later spend it on what should be freely provided services. It traps them in an endless cycle of uncompensated labor with false promises of eventual recognition. And while this is a strong stance to take, it isn't particularly novel. Many stories of all genres and mediums have highlighted the potential exploitation of dogmatic belief. When I first played Silksong, I wasn't struck by the nuance of this theme, nor did I think I'd be motivated to write much about it. And then I finished Act 2. The most straightforward ending to achieve, the one most players will probably get upon first attempt, goes like this. You ascend from Bone Bottom to the top of the glittering citadel, fighting many monsters and meeting many creatures along the way. You learn the pieces of a secret song, clash with the angry daughters of this land's god, then finally do battle with the god itself, Grand Mother Silk. And then you win, and everything else loses. Hornet plunges her needle into Grand Mother Silk and seems to absorb her power, and suddenly the camera pulls away from them both and refocuses on the colossal citadel itself as chunks of rock rain down and then countless silken threads lash out. We're reminded of Haunted Bellheart, of threads ushering in violence and control, but this time their impact only means death. The camera lingers on a desiccated shell mummified by the thread, then pulls out to show the entire citadel, the entire kingdom, entombed in a catastrophe of silk. We move into the cocoon and see Hornet caught in the center, unfurling into something new and terrible and other, and then credits! There are many ways to read this ending. For fans of the original, this conclusion clearly echoes the first ending of Hollow Knight. After defeating what we assume to be the big bad, the player finds themselves unwittingly taking their place. In the context of Grandmother Silk's godhood, we could read this supplantation by Hornet as a villainous turn for our character. She becomes a young deity, more deadly and terrible than any of the previous. Perhaps a new cycle begins, awaiting a new hero to come slay this new god. All of which are valid readings of what happened here. But I saw this and had a different initial reaction. Ah, I thought, the apocalypse. This is where Hornet's pilgrimage has landed her, at the end of the world. It may seem like a stretch to read the end of everything from one silk cocoon, but in my defense, this kind of inference is what the religious apocalypse has always been built from. The word apocalypse itself, now synonymous with end times, once meant something closer to unveiling. Dorian Lynskey writes that it was a genre rather than an event, a story of a supernatural intermediary giving a chosen storyteller a secret prophecy, or, as Alan Watts referred to it, spooky knowledge.
So I will never invoke spooky knowledge. That is to say that I've had a private revelation, or that I have sensory vibrations going on a plane which you don't have.
But despite the limitless potential of this genre, stories of spooky knowledge, tales of unveilings, were irrepressibly about the big event, the grand finale, the end of the world. These were the messages people were being beamed directly from God. Despite the efforts of religious authorities to keep stories of the end out of officially sanctioned literature, apocalypses crept their way into the canon, first in the Jewish book of Daniel, and then, even more bombastically, in the Christian book of Revelation, the Apocalypse of John. In Revelation, John introduces many elements of the apocalypse that folks now take as gospel. The 4 horsemen, the Whore of Babylon, 666, the Antichrist, and separately, Satan, in the form of a dragon. The sun became black as sackcloth, and the full moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to earth. Revelation is the book that gives us the line, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end." And those words, taken as a literary statement, are true. Not only is Revelation the last book in the Christian biblical canon, it provides an endpoint, a finish line for the whole religion. The apocalypse arrives. Christ battles Satan and the Antichrist, and Christ wins. Of course, Christ rules on earth for 1,000 years. There's another battle where Christ wins again. Of course. And then, everyone who has ever died will be resurrected and judged, and those worthy will join God in heaven, and everyone else will be cast into a lake of fire, and that's the end. There is no sun or no moon, there is only the light of God forever, and there should be time no longer. Close the book. There's nothing else that's going to happen. And with this, Revelation becomes, in many ways, the most important book in the biblical story, because it gets the honor of revealing where everything is going. The rest of the Old and New Testament are recontextualized as building to this, the climax of humanity, the end of our species-long pilgrimage. This is where it's all landed us, at the end of the world. I, frankly, love to look at stories this way. I start at the conclusion and work backwards, identifying how each plot thread subtly pointed us in the direction of the ending. I think the end of a narrative gives the clearest indication of what it was all doing, what the work of the story actually was. This is why I had such a powerful reaction to the end of Silksong. Credits roll after the death of everyone we've met, the destruction of everywhere we've been. Surely, then, this must have been about the apocalypse the entire time. Silksong can be played with only the finish line in mind. The religiosity of the Citadel is cynical and exploitative, a golden temple built to separate pilgrims from their sense of self, but it is built around a real deity. And you can make Grandmother Silk your only goal. You will replace the rule of this unjust being with yourself. At the highest levels of playing Silksong, Hornet can move through the Citadel and its surrounding lands like a bullet, stopping to appreciate nothing and help no one until she plunges her needle into Grandmother Silk's head before a single hour has passed. You can treat the ending as the only thing that matters, and the apocalypse that follows is the foregone conclusion of your preordained quest. And with the revelations of, Revelation, the temptation to reach the ending seems equally alluring. This is the seduction of defining a finish line. It becomes the only thing that matters. Whereas Silksong can work Hornet's single-minded determination into a fictional narrative, Revelation seems to encourage the reader to work the knowledge of the oncoming end into their life. For instance, the original text suggests that everyone on Earth will be subject to the many horrors of the apocalypse before God's reign can begin. Men will seek death and not find it until the forces of hell are defeated and Christ can rule in heaven and on Earth. Because of this, Revelation encourages its devotees to be heartened at news of disasters, as this indicates the approaching end times. Any catastrophic event could be, and has been, viewed through this lens. Wars, plagues, volcanoes, eclipses, the nuclear bomb, the AIDS crisis, the election of Barack Obama, or 1,000 other purported antichrists, anything could be read as an indication of the beginning of the end. This desire for apocalypse is combined with the irresistibility of calculating the date that the grand finale will begin. Shortly after any apocalyptic-seeming event, that is to say, virtually any day over the last several hundred years, someone will return to the book and recalculate the day that Revelation is set to begin. Inevitably, this day will be within a few months or years of the current date. Recently, TikTok decided that September 23rd, 2025 was the first day of the end. This, like every other date, was based on some reinterpretation of the hallucinatory and inconsistent writing of the Book of Revelation itself. Each new generation of readers is convinced that God planted a secret meaning in the text that was meant only and especially for them, Jonathan Kirsch writes. A secret numerology that can be unraveled with the right combination of dubious math and historical confirmation bias. All of this, notably, contradicts the words of Jesus Christ himself, who says in Matthew that when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be frightened. That is not yet the end. That many false prophets will claim to identify the return of Christ, and in fact, not even he or the angels in heaven know the true date of the return. But whatever contradiction it has with Christ, the apocalypse makes a perfect accompaniment to those attempting to gain power. Many movements have risen on the promise of the encroaching end times. The Anabaptists in 1534, for example, were led by a cult leader who promised that only they would be safe from the apocalypse. He took many wives, feasted while his subjects starved, and was ultimately tortured to death. The first wave of televangelists, Billy Graham, Pat Robertson, Jerry Falwell, frequently used the imminent end times in their all-encompassing fundraising efforts. Even QAnon adapted a distinctly Revelation style of numerology and delusion into a constantly encroaching yet ever-delayed coming storm. Totalitarianism, writes Dorian Lynskey, demanded apocalyptic myths of a golden past, an accursed present, and a glorious future. Whenever the violence of the elect is purported to purify the world and give birth to a new society, the mythic logic of Revelation is at play. It makes sense, then, that the apocalyptic ending of Hollow Knight Silksong is also the one in which Hornet becomes an all-powerful, all-terrifying god. It is, actually, the easiest ending to achieve. But it's not the only one. For many games, achieving a true ending requires a fairly specific set of steps. Maybe you make a crucial choice in a cutscene, or find a hidden item and ask a character about it. In Hollow Knight, you assemble a legendary charm, fully awaken the Dream Nail, and explore the Abyss in order to fight the true final boss, and witness a more satisfying ending. The list to progress past the apocalyptic finale of Silksong, by contrast, seems almost random. Among the required tasks for Hornet to accomplish are building a frail bridge across a small gap, rescuing Sherma from a frightening location, helping a cartographer reach the end of her journey, reuniting a bunch of fleas and finding them a suitable home. These are tasks deliberately disconnected from someone seeking the finish line. These are acts of generosity, literally within the game, wishes granted, of someone who values the present more than the target of whatever comes next. After all this work, all these wishes granted, Hornet acknowledges her change of heart. "I'll not deny that part of me desires to overtake the Citadel," she says. "Dominance, it seems, is baked deep in my blood. And yet another part resists. That part wishes not to claim a monarch's mantle, rather it would see my freedom regained and this kingdom's bugs unshackled from their pale chains. An outcome outside of control and outside of apocalypse, not to rule 1,000 years on earth or heaven, but to imagine a way forward in the here and now." It's a beautiful sentiment from Hornet, one that recenters the game on community rather than usurpation. It is shocking, then, to enter the fight with Grandmother Silk, holding this ideal in mind, confident in your new direction, and be met once again with apocalypse. Revelation, writes Jonathan Kirsch, is the history of the end of the world, and the history of a world that refused to end. When you decide to not claim the monarch's mantle, decide to free yourself and the kingdom from its pale chains, well, a series of complicated things happen. Basically, you help another bug construct a trap to constrict Grandmother Silk, and that trap ends up pulling the god into the abyss. I do have to point out that this also mirrors Revelation, in which an angel appears with a chain and the key to the abyss, binds Satan, and throws him in. But unlike Revelation, in which this battle is followed by 1,000 years of divine rule, in Silksong we witness almost the same apocalypse as before. The void expands, the kingdom shakes and crumbles, creatures still fall and die and desiccate, threads burst forth once more, not white but black and dripping, threads from the abyss itself. And then, once again, credits. The difference is in what comes after. Before, the ending was seemingly all Hornet desired, but now, with our investment in the land and its people, we're compelled to go back, even after credits. Go back into your save files and tear the threads from your corrupted game, re-enter the world that others may have resigned to the apocalypse. Act 3. No one is yet saved, no one is yet free. The work is still not done. I went over, fairly exhaustively, Silksong's arguments that religion can be wielded as a coercive force. None of this is contradicted by the unveiling of Act 3. And yet, what I realized as I wandered back through Silksong's demolished world is the force that keeps Pharloom's flickering compassion alive, not religion per se, but uncorrupted faith. Sherma, the previously naive pilgrim, has seen the horrors and false promises of the Citadel, has indeed seen the entire structure crumble, and yet has devoted himself to the shelter of others. Though kingdoms may fall, life endures still, he says, and we bugs can build our lands anew. Chakra, the cartographer, protects one of the few remaining enclaves from the dangers of the abyss outside. If you are working towards the Venom's end, I shall fight, she says, with faith renewed. And not least of all, there is you. Set aside all the acts of generosity Hornet had to perform to even reach this point in the story. Set aside her resisting her desire to rule. Think of what it means for you to have reached this point. Silksong is a brutally difficult game, a game in which nearly every single fight could be the moment someone decides they've had enough, a game that requires an insistence on your own ability above and beyond most of the medium, and more than that, it is a game that relentlessly conceals itself. Vast areas, whole plot arcs, an entire act of the game that can only be found through your perseverance, your unveiling. Through its very design, Silksong communicates its belief, its faith, in you. The most moving line of dialogue in the game, to me, happens just before the actual true final boss. As Hornet prepares to dive into the abyss, not to kill something, but to save another, she has a conversation with a ghost, really. A vision. And the vision says, "Take the final plunge, Spider. Join us in my drowning palace and let oblivion swallow us all." An urging, one more time, for annihilation, a personal apocalypse. But Hornet refuses that last call towards the easy, tempting, self-destructive finale. "Oblivion may take you, child. My own life I shall not sacrifice. I have survived the fury of your land, I have borne its barbs and its blades, and I have seen wonder behind its dangers, but always, child, I remain a daughter of Hallownest, and the void below all things, that darkness, I will fear no longer." In 1969, Robert Alter, a scholar and biblical translator, wrote, "There is no room for real people in apocalypses. For when a writer chooses to see men as huddled masses waiting to be thrown into sulfurous pits, he hardly needs to look at individual faces." In Silksong, the apocalypse is not the end. Like war, like plague, it's another calamity that asks who we truly are. Is it the judgmental opportunity we've been waiting for to decide who should be saved and who should be damned? Or is it a time to turn our eyes to each other and realize that whatever's next can only be built from our faith in the present? It took me almost 60 hours to reach the credits of Silksong's Act 3. Much of the game footage for this video was not from that playthrough, and was instead generously recorded by one of the game's top speedrunners, Blue SR, who's capable of reaching the end of Act 3 in less than 3.5 hours. But no one, not me or Blue or anyone else, is capable of talking about all the themes and ideas of this game in a mere, 30 minutes? It took me this long just to talk about a single motif. Fortunately, this is where Nebula comes in. Nebula is a premium streaming service where creators like me upload original, extended, and in some cases, uncensored videos in addition to the essays you know from YouTube. And this month, I just couldn't stop talking about Silksong, so I called up my friends Rasputin and Brendan Bigley and talked for nearly 90 minutes on everything else in the game, our experiences with its narrative, its difficulty, its relationship with the original Hollow Knight, and our reads on what it all means. After a long time being careful with how we discuss spoilers and stuff, it felt amazing to just lay it all out there. You can watch this video for free, actually. Nebula has just introduced a 3-day free trial, during which you can of course watch that video, and then if you decide to continue, it will only cost you $3 a month. And that video isn't the only thing available on Nebula. I've got, at last count, 3 dozen videos you can exclusively see there, and other creators have also been doing great work. King K, another gaming essayist, has a new series on Nebula called Masterful Mimicry on the art history that's influenced games' visual styles. The first episode is, of course, on Okami. The next episode is on, what's this? Hollow Knight Silksong? And man, there's so much more. Big Joel's bonus videos, Patrick Willems is releasing everything a month early, Bobby Broccoli has a whole documentary series that you can only watch on Nebula, all that for only $3 a month, $36 for an entire year if you sign up with my link. Or if you're looking for a holiday gift, you can actually buy someone a month, a year, or even a lifetime of Nebula. Or try out that free trial and check out what you've been missing.